Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Mona Sahay, Professor of IP at IPM. I usually teach subjects that are related to human resource management and organizational behavior. I'm also taking up some subjects of entrepreneurship and some value-added programs of neuro-linguistic programs, as well as uh, empathy and kindness. These are my areas of interest. Now, since in my earlier lectures, I had taken up motivation, I would be continuing with the same topic, that is of motivation. So I'll be starting a new theory today uh, in continuation to my earlier videos. This is known as equity theory. So the theory of motivation that we are going to discuss today is equity theory of motivation. Now, as the name suggests in this theory, we are talking about equity. What does equity mean? Equity means equality. It means equality between two or among more than two. Very simple. Now here, when we are talking of equity theory, we are talking of employees, people who are working in organizations. Of course, since it is a part of organizational behavior, we will discuss things that are relevant to within the organizations. So here we are discussing about equity between two employees or among more than two employees within an organization. Equity related to what? Equity related to jobs. Now, employees are performing jobs in organizations. So here we are talking of equity that are related to job inputs as well as outcomes of these jobs. So what happens, what is said here in this equity theory is that individuals compare their job inputs and outcomes with those of others and then respond to eliminate any equity. So what happens that employees who are working in an organization will compare their jobs inputs, that is how much of inputs they are giving to the jobs, how much of time, how much of skills, how much of efforts, how much of hard work, how much of loyalty, all these things. So what is the input that they're giving to their jobs and also the outcomes of the jobs. So here they are mainly talking about the compensation part, the salary that they get, the compensation that they get out of working for a specific job. And here there are four referent comparisons. These are self inside, self outside, other inside, and other outside. So what are these four comparisons? Just a second. Yes, there was some technical glitch. Now there is self inside, self outside, other inside, and other outside. Here, we can have a look at self inside. What does this mean? That people are comparing themselves at some other place, or that is, by other place, I mean in the same organization, in some other position. So that is self inside. When we are talking about self outside, what does this mean? That the person is comparing himself or herself with working outside the organization. For example, a person might have worked in some earlier organization earlier and might have some different pay package, some different status in the organization, and these things. So there will be a comparison in working in that very organization vis-a-vis working somewhere outside the organization, somewhere else, that is in some other organization. That is self-outside. Other inside means that the person is comparing his or her compensation, input versus output, all these things, with other people inside the same organization. So this is very obvious that people do compare with what their colleagues are getting, what kind of rewards they are getting, what kind of salaries they are getting, what kind of increments they are getting. So employees do compare themselves with their own colleagues in the same organization, which comes under other inside. And then we have other outside, means people do compare themselves, employees do compare themselves with employees of other organizations who are at more or less the same level with similar kind of skill, similar kind of seniority. So they will compare what people in other organizations are getting as compensation of the jobs and how much of inputs they are putting in for those jobs. So these are the four kinds of comparisons. And also we are talking about equities and inequities. So when they find that there is some inequity in these comparisons, there is a very natural tendency to eliminate these inequities. When they feel that they are being underpaid, that is, they are being paid lesser than their counterparts, there is a tendency that they will be tensed, they will be frustrated, they might get angry because they feel that there's some injustice against them. And on the other hand, it also says that when a person feels that the person is being overpaid, is being paid more than their counterparts, than the people with whom they are comparing themselves, then they have a sense of kind of, you can say, gratitude, wherein, and also guilt, wherein they try to work more and give more to their jobs, and thus try to balance this. So we can see in the next slide, choices for dealing with inequity. What are these choices? Change inputs, that is working harder or lesser. So when they think that they are getting more than others, they are working harder. And when they think they are getting lesser than others, then out of frustration, anger, dissatisfaction, and demotivation, they will tend to work lesser. Then change outcomes, that is increase in salary or perks or bigger office cabin. So what are the outcomes that they're looking for? Of course, when they think that they are being underpaid, that is, when compared to others, of course, the outcomes that they are looking for is increase in salary or perks and also bigger office cabins. These are just some of the examples. Also, one of the ways is to distort or change perception of self or others. That is, I work hard enough, others don't work as much as I do. This might be a distortion of perception when they realize that they're getting more salary than others. So they try to adjust their own perception about themselves when they find that they are getting more reward than others. And there could also be change of inputs versus outcomes of others. So these are the choices for dealing with inequity. In this slide, we can see balance or imbalance of rewards, what kind of effect it has. When there are inequitable rewards, especially when we think that we are getting lesser than others, there will be dissatisfaction, reduced output, departure from organization. And when there is equitable rewards, there can be continuation at the same level of output. That is, they will be continuing at the same level of working. And when they think that they are getting more than others, then out of that guilt and in an attempt to come out of that guilt, they will work harder. So these are the outcomes, you can say. These are the changes. These are the choices for dealing with these inequities. Roles played by the equity in motivation. Employees make comparisons between their job inputs and outcomes, as I just said, relative to those of others. If we perceive our ratio to be equal to that of the relevant others with whom we compare ourselves, a state of equity is said to exist. We perceive our situation as fair. Okay. And then the referent that an employee selects adds to the complexity of equity theory. Again, this is very important, that what referent you are selecting. whether you are selecting inside, outside, yourself, or others. That will add to the, you can say, complexity of this theory. These we have already discussed. Now, we can take a recent example of the, uh, news that we have come across of the farmers' protest. Isn't this also a comparison? Isn't this about equity? So they are comparing their own position that existed earlier than their present situation. So this is again a comparison. They are talking about inequities that exists between their present situation and their past situation. What they are saying is that present situation is much worse than what it was earlier. They're getting much lesser gains than what it was earlier. And this inequity has created a dissatisfaction amongst themselves, which they are trying to eliminate. So this is also a very good example of equity theory. Again, we have already discussed these, other outside and other inside. Again, there are also some limitations. We should also keep in mind what are the limitations. One is that though it works more for those who are getting lesser salary when compared to others, it works lesser actually in situations where a person is getting higher salary when compared to others or even the same person inside or outside. So with reference to all four kinds of comparisons, it works lesser and it is less applicable to situations when a person is getting higher salary, higher wages. Secondly, this talks more about the compensation part. This theory talks more about the compensation part, while equity or inequity also includes many factors, many other factors also. For example, a person's employee's status in the organization, the kind of environment the person is enjoying, okay, the kind of opportunities the person is having, the kind of learning opportunities, kind of growth. So there are various factors apart from compensation which have been overlooked here. This has talked more about the pay part. Also, there are exceptions to this theory. As far as people are concerned, some of them are very benevolent kinds. They are just working, not thinking much about the salary. So these people have not been included in this theory. And also, this talks about distributive justice. That is the justice that an employee gets in an organization, and this ignores organizational justice. That is the justice that is there within the system of the organization. So here, the organization as a whole providing justice to its employees is ignored. So these are some of the limitations of equity theory. That's all. Thank you.